Prohibition is the legal act of prohibiting the manufacture, storage in barrels, bottle, transportation, or sale of alcohol, including alcoholic beverages. The term can also be applied to a period in history of different countries during which the prohibition of alcohol was enforced. This definition came from the World Book Encyclopedia. The era of prohibition in the entirety of the United States was 1920 to 1933. There were several other attempts of this movement towards temperance, or the practice of not drinking alcohol, mostly in the northern part of the country. The New England Historical Society lists two major attempts. One, in 1844, when a Massachusetts town banned the sale of alcohol, and the tavern owner took a pig and striped it with paint, and then charged admission to see the pig, and with your admission came a free drink. Another attempt was in Maine in 1855 at the famous Portland rum riots, where people were literally killed over the mayor having a stash in his vault for medicinal purposes. The country so far does not have a good experience with being dry. The nationwide prohibition movement was begun by the 18th Amendment to the Constitution in January of 1919, but was not put into effect until January of 1920 to give everyone time to prepare. Drink up. This movement began long before this, though. According to the ASL, or the Anti-Saloon League website, they gathered national support beginning in 1893, but even lesser-known groups began in 1873. These groups began lobbying for their states for dry senators. So you can imagine a politician who doesn't drink. By 1916, they had enough of these senators to get the bill approved and passed in 1919. Now, there's one more thing you should know. The 18th Amendment didn't, by any authority, give the states or the government any way to enforce prohibition. So in late 1919, the Volstead Act was passed. The biggest problem with this act was there were tons of loopholes, the best one being liquor for medicinal purposes. You could also get liquor for sacramental or industrial purposes. There was a huge number of pharmacists popping up all over the place so that they could sell liquor. Now, the drivers of this were mostly women who wanted their men to stop drinking for the souls of the country to be saved from the sin of getting drunk. This sounds reasonable, right? Well, some of their tactics weren't the best. A lady named Carrie A. Nation, you get the joke, was one of the most radical of the women fighting for the cause. The Kansas Historical Society states that she first raided with the Home Defenders, the group she led, in December of 1894 at the local pharmacy. She pointed out a keg of whiskey, and the ladies took it and smashed it with hatchets in the street and then lit it on fire. It only escalated from there. She was arrested over 30 times, and she started her own newspaper, driving home the point of temperance. She was the forefront of the movement, with speeches and action in journalism. Even though she died in 1911, her dream eventually became a reality. By the end of the 1920s, the Depression was in full swing, and the call for the repeal of prohibition was everywhere. Jobs were being lost because no alcohol was being made, and the states and federal governments weren't making any revenue from it either. In 1932, with the backing of the Americans Against Prohibition Association, Franklin A. Roosevelt ran with the platform of appealing the 18th Amendment. In February 1933, Congress adopted a resolution proposing that the 21st Amendment of the Constitution, which repealed the Volstead and the 18th Amendment. By 1966, all the states have gotten rid of individual bans on alcohol. The idea of prohibition was a decent one, but it never was going to be effective with all the loopholes and corruption that was at play in the states. There were black markets and speakeasies, and if you haven't heard of those, you should look them up. And the people making it themselves. Over 1,000 people died every year during Prohibition from poor quality alcohol that was homemade and toxic. It was an interesting period in the United States that spanned just over a decade. We have definitely lived and learned.